So how will I know that you started?
This is Betty Stolarek, one of the authors of The Painted Turtle. Her pseudonym is Rebecca Thaddeus. She taught for Ferris in the English department for 38 years and has written 3 textbooks and 3 novels. She's going to be reading an excerpt from her latest novel, Coming to Be, that's available in The Painted Turtle. Take it away, Betty.
Hello, I am so happy to be here in Artworks. We were away from it for a while, and it's wonderful to be able to come back and to do things like this. And I'm going to do a short reading of the beginning of my novel, Coming to Be, and we'll talk a little bit about it a little bit later. And this is chapter 1 of Coming to Be. He looks tantalizing lying on his side upon a white sand beach. His right hand supports his upper body, the angle destined to showcase the musculature of his chest and upper arm. The deep bronze of his nakedness attests to his island heritage, and the sand sticking to his thighs, his taut belly, and his feet and forearms indicates that he recently enjoyed a swim in the ocean, which is visible from behind him, with a small rise of sand, gentle white caps kissing the shore. A mass of curly black hair caps his head, and his thin mustache crowns perfect white teeth in an open smile, suggesting that lying naked on a beach in the middle of the day is perfectly natural for him. Carly can't decide whether his best feature is his deep brown eyes, their seductive gleam inviting her to come play, or his perfectly rounded buttocks, barely concealed behind the angle of his right elbow. Everything about his situation, his posture, and his smile suggests the words, "Aloha from Hawaii," which is appropriate, as those are the words printed in yellow approximately a half-inch beneath his prone body. Liz will love it, she says to herself, turning the postcard over to write her message. "How do you like this souvenir I'm sending you? It'll be arriving any day now, don't you wish? Having a great time. Steve took kids to Whale Wharf at Canapali while I stayed at the resort working on my tan. Saw on TV that Michigan got some snow again yesterday. Pity. Well, enough gloating. We'll call you when I get back. Love, Carly." Flipping through the rest of her recently purchased postcard collection, Carly found the one she intended for Beth. These same words at the bottom of the page, "Aloha from Hawaii," this time printed in gold. But there the resemblance ended. This picture was a sunset scene with silhouettes of palm trees swaying before a background of marigold, ultramarine, and fuchsia against a Dresden sky. The whole card seductive in its invitation to would-be Hawaiian vacationers. She wrote, "Yes, Hawaii is really this lovely. You need to come here some year. Been having a great time, taking kids biking down and up Haleakala volcano tomorrow early a.m. Hope my legs can stand it. Should do wonders for my pudgy calves. See you at O'Hare Friday. Thanks again for picking us up. Steve would die if he had to leave his beloved Lexus in that parking lot." And this is the picture that she sent to her other friend. Despite all the changes that had occurred in her life since she first met Beth and Liz 16 years earlier, Carly's relationship with her 2 best friends had remained pretty much the same. Beth and Liz always seemed to inhabit 2 ends of a spectrum, with Carly placed almost dead center between them. From the first day she met them in that hideous apartment on Morgan Street, she recognized herself as a pivot of their seesaw, equally attracted to Liz's life on the edge and Beth's comfortable conformity. Carly sorted through the stack of postcards once more, looking at her twin to best to send the card to her mother. She thought how much the apartment the 3 of them had shared differed from the setting where she currently found herself. The word luxury must have been created to describe the suite at the Merritt Maui Adventure Resort. Silk drapes, velvet upholstery, real gold leaves decorating the dressers, linens that finally made her understand why Egyptian cotton was so expensive. She had just found the postcard she was seeking when a knock at the door announced that, as always, she was too late. Sighing, she slipped the unwritten cards into the desk drawer and, stretching to relieve the pressure on her back, she walked to the door. "Beat you again, slowpoke," taunted 9-year-old Tyler, scabby arms and legs angling out from his Cubs t-shirt and blue shorts. "You're so slow, even for a girl." "I wasn't racing pea-brain," said Celia, with all the disdain a 12-year-old is capable of articulating. Celia looked pristine, as always, in designer jeans and a t-shirt advertising a rock group called Nirvana. Carly hoped the group wasn't particularly degenerate. "What did you see at the Whale Wharf?" over Carly. She had long realized that distraction was the best method for heading off arguments between her children. "Whales," muttered Celia, slipping quickly into her room. "Mom, you should have gone with us. It was really neat. The whale bones were awesome. The skeleton was longer than Uncle Carl's boat." Carly knew she could always count on Tyler to relate to her all the events of his life. "And they had these little stores where they had lots of carved things like boats and whales and little houses, and it was made all out of boats and shells and stuff." "Scrimshaw?" offered Carly. What? Scrimshaw. Isn't that what they call that kind of carving? Sailors used to carve ivory, bone, shells, whatever they had available during their long sailing voyages. Usually they carved things they saw, ships and marine life. It's called scrimshaw. "Whatever," sulked Tyler. Carly made a mental note for perhaps the 1,000th time to quit interrupting other people's stories with the kind of educational information she found fascinating and was able to call to mind at a moment's notice. Most people seemed to find that trait of hers slightly annoying. "Can we see some real whales?" asked Tyler, quickly overcoming his momentary pique. "Sure. We'll probably see some on the boat to Lehigh. The brochure says the whales around that area are very active in January." "And can we go back to the whale place? There's a really neat poster of a whale that I want to get." Carly imagined the walls of Tyler's bedroom, speculating that finding space for one more poster would be pretty difficult. "Dad wouldn't buy it for me." It was only then Carly noticed Steve's absence, although she had to admit he'd been absent, distracted, easily irritated throughout most of this trip. She admired her husband's dedication to the business he had founded and built in the successful enterprise it was today. But between his traveling to do computer consultations and his 12-hour work days when he was at home, he had become almost a stranger to his family during the past few years. Now there's a little segue here where she goes down to the downstairs and checks out what he's doing in the lobby. And she sees him, and he's on the phone. As Carly approached him, she was once again aware of how much kinder the years had been to Steve than to her. Her hair, still brown dark enough to look almost black, was now kept that way through monthly tie jobs. She believed her shoulder-length curls kept her looking young, although not as young as she had looked once she had abandoned that much longer style when Kyler was born. Her azure eyes still sparkled, despite the tiny wrinkles beginning to form at their corners. And the 25 pounds that had somehow inched their way onto her form did not help her image of herself. Often she felt the same vague sense of inadequacy and gratitude she had felt when she first met Steve in college, when he had first taken her to bed, when he had married her. Coming closer, Carly noticed in Steve a look that reminded her of the early days of their marriage. His smile open and relaxed, his eyes liquid with emotion. But he seemed startled to hear her, and quickly mumbled some closing words into the mouthpiece. He hung the receiver into its cradle as Carly reached him. "Who was that?" she asked, somewhat taken aback as that air of tension and mild annoyance, customary with him lately, settled back into his features. "Just someone from work," said Steve, flashing what looked to Carly like a forced smile. "Just another client I have to sweet-talk into signing a contract." "Why didn't you call from the room?" "Right, with Tyler and Celia bickering in the background, very professional." Carly wanted to remind Steve that their offspring were only children. They were actually better behaved, she thought, than most, and that they were all on vacation and couldn't be expected to follow proper office protocol. Instead, she asked about dinner. "Carly, I have about had it with a daddy routine for one day," he responded. "Besides, I'm going to text him with a cattle ranch who needs some computer advice. I've set up a racquetball game with him for later this evening. He could be a prospective client." "But you've got to eat," countered Carly, biting back the words she wanted to say that would express her resentment. Why did she have to share Steve with business on one of their rare vacations? "I snacked all afternoon at the Whale Wharf. Why don't you take the kids to the Chinese place we saw in town? And then we should call it a day. We're going to have to get up at 4 in the morning for the trip up Haleakala." Steve was right. Tomorrow was going to be another busy day with the children. Chinese and early to bed was probably the best course of action. Carly made a mental note to leave the new midnight blue teddy packed in her suitcase for one more night. She had agonized over her purchase for almost a week from ordering it from the Victoria's Secret catalog. Would Steve appreciate her efforts at seduction, or would he only notice how little her body resembled those of the catalog models? She had expected to find an opportunity to wear it by now, 5 days into their Hawaiian vacation. This trip had not lived up to expectations in so many ways. "Okay, don't play racquetball too hard with your new client. Save yourself for tomorrow. You're going to need your strength for the mountain," she answered lightly, turning toward the front desk. Her carefree stride away from Steve belied the dull, anxious ache, settling like felted wool, overtaking her heart. This was the first book that I wrote, and I wrote it about 25 years ago. And I have belonged to a writer's group for many years, and I would advise anybody who wants to write to get some people to give you advice and give you some background. And they liked the book, but they hated the ending. So I got busy. I wrote One Amber Bead, and I got this one published. This one is set in Poland during World War II. It talks a lot about what happened to my family, and then I went back to Coming to Be and changed the ending, and they hated that one even more. So I wrote My Mother's Daughter, which came out of a visit to Natchez, and I was really interested there and went back and learned about the history of that, and wrote a historical novel about the women of Natchez, going back to well over 100 years. And liked it, publisher liked it. Tried again. They loved it. They loved the ending.
The third time's the charm.
Yeah. So went ahead and got this published.
So how do you come up with an idea? Obviously, if you've had that idea for 25 years, how did you come up with it initially?
Probably for 50 years.
50 years, okay. How did you come up with it? How did it come to be?
Well, the postcard that I showed you, that first one, with the gentleman on the beach.
Gentleman, okay.
I mean, it just kind of gave me an idea, and I thought I could go someplace with this. The one set in Natchez, I went to a little program they gave about the women in Natchez. And they were mostly young women who lived in the East in places like Philadelphia, and who would be mail order brides and would go down the Mississippi River, on a boat and meet their new husband so they could kind of set up a household. And I just couldn't stop thinking about that young girl who would do that. She probably wouldn't get along with her mom. She probably felt constrained. Okay, so she went down there, and a lot happened.
So that book, My Mother's Daughter, is all about what happened to her after she got to Natchez.
Right, as you might expect. Again, they come from something you see, something you do, something that happened to you, and you just expand it. But again, a writer's group is extremely helpful. Get you on the
Because
right
they tell
place.
you the truth.
Yeah, they tell you the truth. And we've been doing this for probably 30 years.
Now, are you still part of the group that used to meet here?
What was that?
The group, are you still part of the group that used to meet at Artworks?
I
Or
was there
some bits
before.
and pieces
yeah,
of it?
Yeah, but no, not right now.
Oh, yeah, because
Of course,
nobody's meeting, everything's
anywhere.
virtual. Just like this is virtual, right?
Right.
What's your favorite part of writing fiction?
Getting it published.
So not the process.
The process is painful. You spend all day working on something and think, oh, this really looks great. This is exactly what I want to say. And then a couple of days later, you look at it and say, this is awful. Why did I write this? But once it's published, doing things like this, I love working with book clubs. If anybody has a book club and is interested in doing one of the books, I do a lot of Zoom right now. I've had as many as 7 Zooms in a week.
Where people are reading your book in their book club and then you come and talk about it.
Right. So I'm happy to do that. And just to get the response from people when it's done, it's an exciting thing to do. And I think it's something that anybody could try. If you've ever had thoughts about it or dreams about it. I taught for 38 years and I wanted to write novels and did not have the time. It just couldn't happen. But once I retired, I got back to it and things started happening.
So which one is your favorite of the 3?
Probably Coming to Be.
Because you've been working with it for so long.
Yeah, and I have to tell you, my best friend, I have a friend who I've had literally from life. Our parents were best friends, and so we were in cribs together, and we've stayed best friends forever. And she's very much a character in this book, the first one that I wrote. And I'll read you the dedication to her. To Nancy, my lifelong best friend who helped me understand what Coming to Be was really all about. And you may have guessed from the beginning of the reading, I thought it was about a divorce, a family that fell apart, some of the problems that were there. But she said no. She said it's about how your friends get you through hard times.
So it's really a novel about friendship.
And that's really what it is, and how even when things seem really hopeless, which I think a lot of us are feeling right now, a better time comes, and so many good things can come still. So I do love this novel. I'm glad that I finally was able to get it published.
Thank you, Betty, for agreeing to do a reading for us and for answering some questions about your writing. We hope to have writers from the Painted Turtle read for us on Tuesday nights coming up over the next several weeks. So pay attention to our website, artworksinbigrapids.org, and to our Facebook page for more information. Thanks so much.
Thank you.